Welcome to another episode of Let's Chat With. Joining me is the co-founder of the organization, Not9to5, Hassel Aviles. How are we doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for joining me on this episode. Can you share the story behind Not 9 to 5 and what inspired its creation?
Absolutely. So Not9to5 is a Canadian nonprofit. We're headquartered in Toronto, but we do have partners and support, around the globe. It started really from personal lived experience. I grew up working in restaurants and bars and hotels in the culinary hospitality sector, and I, at the same time, simultaneously was living with a lot of mental health and substance use challenges, and also seeing them everywhere I worked. It was in abundance, extremely high rates, but yet there was no dialogue and no conversation and no acknowledgement or addressing or support or resources or anything. And instead, just so much shame and stigma. And so, how Not9to5 started was really just me starting to tell my story. I co founded it with another chef who's no longer involved. And we started telling our stories, and we thought this was going to be like a cute little 6 month project kind of thing. And it completely has taken over my life. It's 6 years later, it's my full time job, the executive director of an incorporated nonprofit. So really took on a life of its own. People really responded, and it became a bit of a me too, me too, me too experience. Every time I tell my story, I had so many chefs and restaurateurs and servers, bartenders, etc., come up and say, I have a similar experience, and really just a lack of support and resources that was out there was what gave birth to Not9to5.
What is the significance of the name Not 9 to 5?
Sorry, the name we chose is because nothing about mental health or the culinary hospitality sector runs on those hours. So because everything is not 9 to 5, and I remember when I was a server and I worked in restaurants, everyone would call like the clientele the 9 to 5ers, and so we were not 9 to 5, and so it just kind of fit.
What is the main goals of Not 9 to 5?
Great question. So we have a lot of goals, per se, but I would say that our main goals are to really share practical education and advocate for improving workplace mental health in the hospitality and culinary sector. We also have goals around meaningful community building, and we aim to break stigma, fuel hope, and really foster more psychological safety for all industry professionals.
Why is it important to focus on mental health of the hospitality and culinary sectors?
We are industry specific because we have industry specific concerns. A lot of mental health organizations that exist out there are very generic, and they are, when I say generic, is that I mean that they're like for everyone. They're meant to cover a broad range of different people with a broad range of different needs. And the industry has very specific needs. So over the years, we've done a lot of research and surveying, and the data has showed us that there's like really specific primary concerns that this industry experiences and sees. And the other reason why I think it's really important to focus on the industry specific part is because a lot of the experiences are as a result, a byproduct of the environment. What I mean by that is that professional kitchens have a very specific environment that unfortunately create a lot of challenges for people's emotional experiences. And the same goes for restaurants, same goes for bars, same goes for hotels. This industry really by design, unfortunately, creates a lot of very specific challenges for folks.
After a hospitality or culinary professional contacts your organization, what is the next step for you?
So it depends what they're looking for, right? Like we are not mental health professionals. We have all of our content and our courses advised on by mental health professionals, but I always say we are not the help. We are the connection to help. So it depends what they're looking for. If they are looking for specific, maybe therapy support or a specific resource, then we can connect them to that. Or if they're just looking to learn more, we have a lot of companies, restaurants, chefs, owner operators that want to learn more about workplace mental health and support skills. And so then we have our courses that we would, refer you to. So it really depends what they're looking for. Other times people are still not ready to really get into the help side of things. They just really just want to follow along. So we have a great social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, that kind of thing, and a podcast that we launched last year that people can tune into to learn more about workplace mental health, about psychological safety, and about how those two things intersect in our industry.
During your research into the hospitality and culinary sectors, what have you discovered?
I mean, I could talk about that for hours, but I will summarize it for you. We've discovered so many things. So, one of the things I already alluded to is that a lot of the mental health and substance use challenges are byproducts of the environment. What I have discovered is that this industry needs to change the environments that they're operating, how they're operating, because it has such a severe impact on chefs, servers, bartenders, etc. Whatever the role is. Specifically speaking on kitchens, I have learned that the brigade system, which is like, if no one knows what that is, if they're listening, what's the brigade system? The brigade system is an influence that has existed since the late 19th century that still exists today, unfortunately. And the influence of having like really strict hierarchies actually leads to more fear-based authoritative environments, which also really impacts people's emotional experiences and really makes it so that they can't express their emotions. And it creates, an environment where vulnerability isn't encouraged, an environment where mistakes are penalized, an environment where it's not safe to always show up as your authentic self. It also creates environments that are not very inclusive, which is a really big problem, because when people don't feel a sense of belonging where they work, then you start to it starts to create other problems for them, and you do see really high rates. So just to give you a sample of our research, we did a survey in 2021 that was funded by the federal government, and we had over 600, almost 700 participants throughout North America fill out our survey. And these were roles like from all kinds, from a dishwasher to a restaurateur to a server, bartender, chef, you name it. We had them fill it out. And what we have discovered is that we have extraordinarily high rates of mental health challenges, which include rates of burnout at 87%, anxiety 84%, depression 76%, disordered eating symptoms at 63%. So really, really high rates. And even with all of that, we still have 2/3 of the industry still saying that they don't feel it's safe to show, and they keep it to themselves. The research and data shows us that we still have a long way to go when it comes to stigma. When, destigmatization is something we really need to focus on in kitchens, with chefs, with bartenders and servers. This industry really still has a long way to go. And then the other thing we've discovered is that this industry needs more education around workplace mental health. A lot of people don't know a lot about workplace mental health. You go to culinary school, you go to hospitality school or tourism school, and you learn a lot of things. But unfortunately, from what I can see, most educational institutions are not equipping the next generation of leaders with these skills, or with this education, with this vocabulary. If you ask like the top chef in the world, hey, do you know what psychological safety is? Unfortunately, I've yet to find a chef that can casually rhyme out the definition of psychological safety, or that really truly understands how to foster it as well.
How did the recent COVID-19 pandemic impact the hospitality and culinary sectors?
Destroyed it, absolutely destroyed it globally. So I speak to people in the US, in the UK, in Australia, in Argentina, like Copenhagen. Like I have a wide range of, of a network through restaurants, through bars, through hotels. And honestly, it's a different version of the same story absolutely everywhere. There's not like a huge difference. It's like, okay, maybe it's worse on these things over there and then over here, but overall, it's decimated it. We had the Great Resignation during the pandemic, which is basically, tens of thousands, or globally, I mean, millions, but hundreds of thousands of people leaving a sector. And, it was a lot of financial insecurity. It was a lot of, scarcity and fear, people not knowing what's going to happen. And when you're out of work and you can't go to work because everything was closed, it left a lot. It left a lot of trauma. It left a lot of collective grief. And as a result, I don't know where people will be tuning in from, but in a lot of our cities, we've lost thousands of restaurants that are never coming back, thousands of bars that will never come back, hotels that are never come back. And this was an industry that was already hard to succeed guaranteed in terms of profit margins and all of that. But truly, like I can speak for here in Canada, where it was documented and researched, the food service and accommodation sector was one of the hardest hit during the pandemic. And by still tuning in to what's happening in Ontario, BC, like provincially, but nationally as well here in Canada, we have not gone back. Like we have not resolved the impact of the pandemic. We are still very much, if you speak to anyone that works in the sector, or at least that owns a business in the sector, they'll tell you we are still very much recovering from the pandemic. And I think what happened was truly detrimental. I think for anyone out there that loves restaurants and loves the culinary sector, really try to visit your local small business, your local restaurants, as much as you can, because with also the rise of inflation and all these other things that have happened since the pandemic, it really is still very much in recovery.
One of your many programs is called Connecting. Can you explain what Connecting is?
Yes. So we call it connecting. I know it's not spelled properly.
Mhm.
So the CNECT stands for Change Needs Everyone Coming Together. And we really wanted to emphasize that everyone plays a role in change, that no one, it's not on one person and no one gets away with not playing a role. All of us have to contribute. All of us have to be involved with the change needed. For culinary and hospitality, that can mean, getting more education, taking workshops. That can mean looking into employee assistance programs, like however it is that you want to contribute to the change needed. Everyone plays a role. And connecting is an education. It's so it's free to join. Anyone can join. You can just go to not9to5.org/connecting, spelled CNECTING.
Mhm.
And once you join, you click to join. And once you click to join, you create an account, free, completely free, username, password, that kind of thing. Once you're on the educational platform, you'll see it's filled with different resources and tools. So there's free downloads. You can download a lot of free PDFs with lots of information and resources and tools. And this is also where our courses live. So since 2020, we've developed two courses. One is called Primary Concerns, and that was the one that was based on, a lot of the research that we did and surveys that we did, where we discovered the five main primary concerns to be depression, anxiety, burnout, substance use, and disordered eating. And so we focused a lot of information and education around those five primary concerns. And that course is just shared information. There's no quiz, there's no test. It's just you read through and you just kind of gain information. But then we learned from a lot of folks that told us, we really want to go deeper into these topics. And we got more funding and we were able to create Connected. So it's CNECTED, kind of hinting at education. So that Connected certification course does have quizzes. There is a test you have to pass at the end to get certified. It still covers the five primary concerns, but it goes a lot deeper by, testing your learning, assessing your learning. And then also we took an intersectional lens with Connected. So we included topics like racial trauma, microaggressions that happen in the workplace, the impact of being someone of a marginalized community and what that is like in hospitality and culinary, because that lack of inclusion I was talking about earlier is so predominant in this industry. We really felt it was important to include that and help not just people that are, maybe Black, Indigenous, or people of color, or LGBTQ plus community, or disabled. It's not really just for them to feel included and seen and heard, but also for managers and leaders to know how important it is for them to consider, that the sector is very multicultural, that it is full of so many different faces and voices, and that needs to be addressed when you're talking about workplace mental health, especially. Those are the two courses. What else is on Connecting? Connecting also has like a lot of great access to support. So we launched a program earlier this year in Ontario called Smart Serve Cares. And basically anyone who has Smart Serve, so if anyone doesn't know what Smart Serve is like your alcohol training program for Ontario hospitality professionals. If you have Smart Serve, then you can get access to free hours of therapy, free educational materials, and access to a cognitive behavior program, all for free. And we have the link in Connecting as well, but we also have a link in there there for any 18 plus Canadians who are not Smart Serve certified. We wanted to make sure to stay inclusive. So if you're from BC or Alberta or Nova or East Coast, or if you're not Smart Serve certified and you work in kitchens, for example, you can still access the exact same program by joining Connecting, and the link is right on the.
What kind of feedback have you received from professionals in these sectors after utilizing your organization services?
Very happy to report that all of the feedback we get is positive. I would say when we do get constructive feedback, because I love feedback, I always ask for feedback. I think feedback is a gift. So I would say the most positive feedback we've gotten is from owner operators that have taken our course and want to offer it to their whole entire team. So they'll buy the ability to, they'll invest in these courses for their staff. So I think that's incredible feedback. The other incredible feedback we've gotten is from professors that work in educational institutions like colleges and universities, and they have incorporated our course into their curriculum, or they have incorporated their course for their student. They add their course, add the course for their student to take. And I think, I mean, what better feedback is there than that? In terms of constructive feedback, I would say we have heard that people want us to translate our courses. So we're working on that, being able to offer it in other languages, as well as offering our content offline. So not everyone likes to learn online. Not everyone wants to sit in front of their computer or their phone. So we're working on that. We're developing, a book, for example, that someone can just take, with them or keep forever and just refer back to. So offline materials, keeping it more accessible for more folks. And I would say the other kind of constructive feedback we've gotten is just to do more courses. But unfortunately for that, we need a lot more funding. So we're working on it. We're always applying to grants and stuff like that. And so just a matter of time.
Your organization was recently featured on an episode of Top Chef Canada. What was that experience like for you and your organization?
Do you want the honest answer?
Sure.
Or like the PR answer? I would say it was conflicted. I was conflicted in that experience. I mean, on the outside, of course, it's incredible. It's amazing. It's such an honor to be part of their first gala fundraiser here in Canada, to receive a donation, to receive this kind of exposure is enormous. And we're so grateful to that. And it was obviously a beautiful party. We all got to dress up, and that part is amazing. And then there's a flip side, there's a dark side to the entertainment business and the TV industry, in particular, the reality TV industry. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of workplace conditions that reminded me of our industry. And, a lot of people working really long hours without a break. The crew are there, not always getting the exact same attention that, for example, the judges get. So just that kind of that's kind of just hard to witness as a leader of an organization that's always talking about labor conditions and workplace. So that part was a bit tricky to witness. And then also to see what the chefs endure. So I actually knew one of the chefs that competed, and, hearing about what their experience is like from an emotional, psychological safety perspective was tough. It's really tough to put chefs through that kind of experience. And I know it makes for good TV, and I know it's really entertaining, but until you put yourself through a situation like that, it's really, really high stress, and it's really, really intense experience to go through. And I hope in the future there'll be more support for the competitors, more empathy and more compassion for the competitors, because I think that it leaves a mark.
In regards to mental health, what do you think of shows like Hell's Kitchen, where they get yelled at a lot right on camera?
I think it's disgusting. I think it's glorifying exploitation and trauma as entertainment. I think it is completely dehumanizing to have shows like Hell's Kitchen. I think it's abuse. We're witnessing abuse on a television show. It's verbal abuse, emotional abuse. It's a lot of manipulation. And I think it really gives the industry a bad name. I think what Gordon Ramsay has done with his shows is beyond even the scope of what we understand. So I recently read a paper that I do a lot of research. I'm a kind of a research nerd, and I do a lot of deep dives into research papers and academic papers. And I read one recently that was specifically about the impact of media, food media, on the career development of chefs. And shows like Hell's Kitchen and shows like anything that Gordon Ramsay has ever been involved in, they do impact people's understanding of themselves. They do have direct impact, and then they also have indirect impact. And it was the indirect impact that I found so fascinating because it creates almost like this idea that there's like a confusion around suffering and excellence, where you think that in order to achieve excellence, you have to endure suffering. And there's actually no truth to that whatsoever, and all the research and the data, it shows that that is absolutely not necessary. There's many ways to achieve excellence without enduring suffering or without, working in an abusive environment or without being exploited or without being dehumanized. And so I think that that is a really big problem. And I hope in the future that we see less of those kinds of shows, as well as The Bear is another example, where we have a lot of accuracy in terms of showing like, wow, look at the intensity of what these experiences are for chefs and for servers and for owner operators. And I think that that's important. And on the flip side, it's not very trauma informed and it's glamorizing a lot of things that are absolutely detrimental to people's mental and physical well-being. And so I think that there needs to be some sort of acknowledgement around that, and ideally in the future, I hope that there's less shows monetizing hospitality trauma as entertainment.
What advice do you have for someone that's interested in working in the hospitality or culinary sectors?
So much. I'll try to sum it up into a short little bit, but I have so much advice for anyone entering this industry. Anytime that anyone tells me that they want to get in and they're really young, like they're a teenager or your early 20s, I always like want to try have a bit of their time to really help them understand what they're going into. I entered the industry at 17. I had no idea what I had agreed to when I took that job. I really entered the industry blind, completely blind. And so I would say to someone that is entering the industry to not base, their dreams and goals based on what they see out there already. I think this industry needs reimagining, it needs rebuilding, and it needs a lot of unlearning. So I would say what exists out there, you don't have to do what's already out there. Like you can reinvent the wheel. Please do. Actually, please do reinvent the wheel. I would say, there's a lot that this industry can learn from other industries, in terms of regulating things, processes, systems of change, even just like incorporating more support for the sustainability of those that work in the industry. There's other industries that do that better than ours. So I would say for anyone entering the industry to not accept things not accept that, oh, that's the way it's always been done, and not accept this industry, a lot of the norms of this industry, to not accept that you can, bring new ideas, and this industry is ripe for innovation. We need a lot more innovation. We need a lot more creativity. We need a lot more proactive approaches. I think there's a lot of reaction that happens in this industry. It's all very, you're reacting to things, what the customer needs, what the guest needs, oh, the pandemic, like we're just always react. And I would say to encourage whoever's entering the industry to really take a proactive approach and think ahead, annual strategies for things, 5-year plans, 10-year plans. Even if, like, listen, not everything goes to plan, but even if you're thinking that way, if you're thinking long term, if you're thinking big picture, you're more likely to create scalable solutions that are going to benefit you and the business and everyone that works there long term. And I think that that would be really important for someone to understand coming in. The other thing I would say to anyone who wants to work in this industry is to really work on support skills, because I think that they'll help themselves and I think they'll be able to help others. And what I mean by support skills are, for example, active listening skills. A lot of times we're hearing people, but we're not actually actively listening. And so I would really encourage them to build on their active listening skills, learn about workplace mental health, learn about psychological safety. And the last thing I would say to anyone entering this industry is know your right. Learn employee rights as much as you can. The more you can learn about employment law and labor, labor regulations and all these things, like what are your government mandated breaks that you're entitled to? What are the days off you're entitled to? Because there's so many people that run restaurants in a very dysregulated way. And if you don't know your right, very easy to take advantage of you. And that's not to make it seem like there's only bad employers in this industry. There's not. There's amazing ones too. There's really good ones and really, truly like inspiring leaders. The reason I say this is because don't need a license to open a restaurant. Anyone can open a restaurant. All you need is money. So if you have capital, you can open a restaurant. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of restaurateurs that exist out there, or bar owners, hotel owners, that don't actually have leadership skills, that don't actually understand workplace mental health, that don't even understand the laws around workplace mental health. There's a lot of laws around health and safety that don't always get followed in restaurants. So I would say if you learn them, then you can advocate for yourself and you can protect yourself better.
Lastly, where can people find out more about you and Not 9 to 5? Website, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook?
Oh, thank you for asking that. That's so nice. People can find us online. So we have a website, not9to5.org, and that's number 9 and number 5. Our Instagram is at not9to5 underscore. We don't have TikTok. We do have a Facebook account. Same, you can find us not9to5 at Twitter as well, or X, or whatever you want to call it now these days, as well, not9to5. And I think we're on LinkedIn as well. So that's the best way to find us. And please visit our website, reach out if anyone is in the industry or just wants to learn more about Not9to5. We always love to hear from new folks.
Well, thank you for joining me on this episode of Let's Chat With.
Thank you.